Hey guys, what's going on? This is John from Friends with Your Benefits. I recently came across a crazy statistic, and the statistic stated that roughly 75% of all Americans out there are considered overweight, and we aren't getting any thinner anytime soon. By 2030, it is estimated that roughly 50% of all Americans will be considered obese, and candidly, that's not a health stat that our country frankly needs, nor does it deserve. Now, we do know that weight loss is really important to your overall health and well-being, and we are seeing on social media that Ozembic and hashtag #OzembicFace are among the top trends out there, and many celebrities such as Kim Kardashian have used Ozempic in order to effectively lose weight quickly. Now, that's all said and good, but there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind. So first, these medications are relatively new, and with many of these medications, you need to be on them for the long term. Otherwise, potentially you can put the weight back on. But on the flip side, we don't know the long-term implications and what will happen to our body if we're on these medications for many, many years. Now, from an employer perspective, this is something you definitely want to continue to monitor in the marketplace, as this medication costs roughly $1,000 per patient per month. Now, earlier we had mentioned that roughly 50% of all Americans will eventually be considered obese. So if you're doing some rough math and you're a large employer, potentially this can cost your company millions of dollars per year. But there are some alternatives in the marketplace that you may wish to consider, or perhaps supplement if you decide to cover Ozempic. Recently, I had the opportunity to demo the Dario Health Smart Scale. Here it is. And I had the opportunity to go through it and see how the overall program works. So today, I'm going to show you how to actually go about using your Dario Smart Cellular Scale. I'll give you a little bit of a tour as it relates to the app, talk to you about the coaching program, and then as an added bonus, we're going to bring in Dr. Omar Manejwala, the Chief Medical Officer from Dario Health, to talk a little bit more about that and overall weight loss trends in the marketplace. Stay tuned. All right, so to use the Dario Cellular Scale, you simply step on it. So YouTube, you're going to see my actual weight today. So we step on it, and we see I'm coming in at 180.8 pounds. And we scroll in, or we zoom in, we see there's a little cloud symbol that's going on. And the cloud symbol indicates that it's taking the data from the scale and sending it to the Dario cloud itself. And the OH means that the data is now uploaded and will go into the Dario app. All right, so we're going to go into the Dario app, and we open it up, and you see right on top it says your weight was synced. We're going to click see it now. We click see it now, and here's my info. As we saw on the scale before, it's 180.8 pounds, and it's showing that I need to essentially lose roughly 3 pounds in order to get into the healthy range. So there are some tips below to actually go into the weight management. Let's take a look, and we click it. And we see some features here. What is a healthy weight? So it goes on top. What is a healthy weight? It indicates that a healthy weight can be determined by two numbers, BMI and waist circumference. And it has some information here. We're going to click good to know. Striving for a healthy plate. Let's click that. And it says that smart planning can make a huge difference in your weight management success. Strive for 50% vegetables and fruits, 25% protein, 25% grains. The more the better. Choose foods that are low in saturated fat, sodium, and added sugars. There are some other tips down here, such as getting active, find what works, understanding nutrition labels, which is certainly huge, and then lastly, time to relax. We go back, and we're going to click the check button for data entry. Now, on top in the logbook, you see we have my weight as 180.8 pounds, but right below that, there's another weight that's 17.6 pounds. Now, this isn't an error. What actually happened is my puppy Dasher decided to step on the scale, and he's coming in at 17.6 pounds. And we see below that my weight from earlier this morning, and then below that the number of steps I have done in the day. And this is awesome that it really syncs with your Apple Watch. We scroll down and it has some other metrics as well. So certainly everything is here. And then below that, there is a chat feature that you could actually chat with the Dario coach if you need tips on weight management. So now we're going to circle back and we're going to talk to Dr. Omar Manejwala and get his thoughts and reactions on my demo of the Dario Cellular Scale and the Dario app. So, Dr. Omar, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to be here. I'm a big fan of this, and it's really awesome to have this conversation. Very topical, and as you noted in your intro, very timely considering the problem.
Absolutely. And Dr. Omar, so you have a Peloton in your background. So how do you like riding on the Peloton?
Yeah, I have to tell you, like during the pandemic, I took a hit like many people and realized I got to get moving. I can't just stay on this couch. So yeah, I do get on it pretty regularly, and then I've got the tread that I put a little laser cut piece on it so I can put my laptop on it too. Like most people, I don't get on as often as I should, but it is helping tremendously. And not everybody can afford these kinds of devices, so we have to recognize that we're privileged when we can. Yeah.
Absolutely. And for me personally, I use the Peloton app, but I kind of fake the Peloton experience
Ah,
where I have
that's
just a regular
smarter. You're
spin
smarter
bike.
than me. That's good.
I mean, the tough thing is, right, it syncs to the Apple Watch, which is
Yeah.
definitely nice. I know one of the Dario devices does as well.
Yeah.
Clearly the takeaway is you don't have the cadence or some of the other things, but hey, if you're just looking for a great workout, it definitely is a fraction of the price of the Peloton.
Everybody
But
needs to move more. Everybody needs to move more. That's yeah, absolutely.
absolutely. So Dr. Omar, I think you had a chance just to see my demo of the scale, right? So I felt overall it was pretty good. It's pretty simple, right? You put the scale on the ground, make sure the floor is level, and hopefully most people have level floors in their house, or they can go somewhere where it's level. You weigh yourself, and then you wait until you see the OH. And I thought it was really cool how the weight automatically went to the cloud, and I open up the app, and there it is. And I mentioned the Apple Watch before, right? And literally, like all my steps for the day are automatically synced within the Dario app, right? I guess the one takeaway is, and again, just my understanding of the program demoing it, is it's not available in the individual market, right? So I guess what that means is if you're out there and you see the scale, you kind of like it, you have to ask your employer or HR saying, hey, I like the scale. Can employer, offer this to us in the future, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
So what else, aside from just, the scale and just seeing the app, and, certainly there's a coaching component, but what else should our audience know about, the coaching as it relates to the Dario weight management program?
Yeah, and the philosophy of the program too. I mean, and this is really intended to complement your life. We began in the direct to consumer space. We're still in the direct to consumer space, but not for this particular product. But we've got a lot of experience there. And some of the
Sure.
things we learned along the way are things that maybe you would already consider. For example, people come from different cultures, different backgrounds, they eat differently. We're Indian. I mean, you're not going to convince my mother to eat broccoli. That's not a food that really exists in our culture. So, you've got to adapt. You got to be adaptive. And also, there's some people that just aren't going to go low carb, or they aren't going to go high protein, or they're not going to do it. So no amount of, pushing or pressing a particular approach to eating is going to work. So what we do instead is really take FDA guidelines and the DRIs that come from the FDA that have been, updated recently around approaches that work. And then, as you've probably heard many times, the way of eating that's going to work is the one that you'll stick with. And so we support you on that. And by the way, you might need to change that. There's a lot of evidence on Mediterranean. That's awesome. But a lot of people can't afford that. In fact, there was a lot of research that showed that Mediterranean diet kind of selects for a socioeconomic status. So Dario's big thing is, unlike a lot of the other solutions in the space that say, okay, you got to go low carb, you got to do X, Y, or Z, it's really about a flexible, adaptive, supportive approach. We integrate the scale, integrate the coaching, provide that kind of behavioral feedback through the application to get you to where you need to get to. And it's more than being an alternative to things out there. It really complements whatever else you might be doing to manage your weight, your weight journey to get to something healthy that supports your maybe your other chronic conditions.
Fair enough. So one thing that I've heard of, and I've certainly seen, with myself and just, trying to get in shape is, hey, you may like be successful and you may lose 5 to 10 pounds, and then people tend to yo-yo, right? Is there
Right.
anything that you see or perhaps Dario does that's different to kind of prevent the yo-yo effect?
Yeah. So I think, fad kinds of diets and very sort of rapid sort of success is extremely enticing. And we've known this for a very long time. And in fact, weight loss and sort of snake oil sales have been sort of considered the same in many areas. And, just look at your TikTok or your Instagram feed and you'll see the opportunities there. I think the bottom line is finding something you can live with and then keeping it fresh and novel. People don't like to do the same. So we're stuck behaviorally. On the one hand, we want to form habits that are healthy, and those require etching in like grooves over time and really solidifying and stacking those habits so that we get, benefit from the combined. At the same time, we need novelty, and we have novelty seeking. So we can't eat the same 4 or 5 recipes all the time. I mean, yeah, sure, if you're a bodybuilder or athlete, you can meal prep, you can do all that stuff. The average person's just not going to ever do that. It's not going to happen. So what we need to do is set reasonable goals and then inject novelty and use behavioral tricks and tools and what we know about habits to keep it fresh, to keep it interesting. And then when there are setbacks, which there always will be setbacks, that's known. That's a known phenomenon. When there are setbacks, then it's reframing how we understand those. Are those learning opportunities? What can we do in terms of our own autopsy to see what went differently and to see that as a growth moment and to get a coach to really support that? So I would say if I had to distill it all down, it's accountability, but without shame, right? We want to be accountable, but we don't want to experience that negative internal force. So the way Dario handles that is by supporting these, identifying what's important to people, focusing on what matters to them, deploying personalized solutions that support them in a way of eating that works for them and their families. They may be the person who cooks for the family, and the wife or the husband or the kids are just not going to eat certain ways. So what do you do in that circumstance? How do you adjust? And then when it gets boring, when you get tired, when you get tempted, when other types of things happen, how do you readjust and reframe and come back on board? And sometimes people have to step away for a while before they step back to it. So it's putting all that together in a behavioral kind of picture to support people. And that's really been the success of the Dario solution. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So I guess something that I've kind of heard in the marketplace, and there's a few things that you said I want to unpack as we go forward with our interview, is I've been hearing a bunch of things out there that, hey, processed foods really aren't great for weight loss. Is there any truth to that, or is that kind of in the fiction realm? Curious your thoughts.
No, I mean, there is some evidence behind that if you were to make your own, there's some evidence around making your own foods as being more valuable than buying processed foods, and all the value of shopping around the outside of the grocery store that people told you years ago. All of that is sensible, but and so this is the problem with weight loss research in general, which is there are a lot of things that work. But the primary problem in weight loss and in digital health and in health in general is engagement and retention. So there are many things that work, but there are few opportunities to continue doing something because of all the known exit nodes off the path of all the highway exits off the path of this that are so tempting and easy to take. So the question is, what gets you, you're going to go off the exit, what gets you back on? And so rather than identifying a particular thing, like, so, all right, we should avoid processed foods, for example. Okay, that's very valuable. I mean, we want to look at nutrient density. Even there are folks who I think rightly emphasize the installation of carb fiber ratios in other areas. These are ways of guiding us towards a path that will likely produce weight loss, but they have to be coupled with some flexibility, opportunity to switch to other methods, ability to maintain novelty in the process, and all those behavioral levers. So what we found is despite, if you're a diet book author or something else, or if you're a company that promotes low carb or something like that, despite the fact that it may have worked for you and it may work for a few people, the ultimate objective here is not the loss of a few pounds for a few months. The ultimate objective is approaching appropriate weight for you, whether it's ideal body weight or some other metric, and reducing your chronic disease burden, making you and then all the other stuff that goes along with it, feeling better about yourself, feeling more energetic, maybe it's nice to fit into the pants that you wore a few years ago. All that's good as well, but would you rather wear those pants for a month or for a decade?
Absolutely. And one thing that you touched upon is behavioral, right? So we're in May now, right? And May is Behavioral Health Month. So can you talk to our audience about kind of the link behind weight management and, some of the behavioral, causes of it, perhaps?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, let me just say, it is hard to do the things we're talking about. I mean, I think there's a lot of stigma, and there's bias, and there's shame, and there's discrimination against folks who are overweight. We've seen this. Okay. And it happens everywhere you look. And we know about it. And especially with youth and teens and stuff, it's really toxic. It can be. And so it's hard enough to do it even if you didn't have some behavioral health condition. But now imagine that you're struggling with depression or anxiety, which is much, much more common, especially in Gen Z and other areas. You've got a lot of factors that conspire to make this exceedingly difficult. And then on top of that, depression itself produces for many people what we call psychomotor retardation, or like not wanting to move as much, not being as active, low energy, that sort of thing. So, I mean, these factors really conspire to make it a lot worse. And this is the reason why, the approach that we've taken at Dario is a whole health approach. What we do is we deploy a full suite of solutions against folks that that support their behavioral health needs, that support their weight loss needs. Maybe they have pre-diabetes. Half the people with diabetes, more than half have hypertension. So managing all these things together in an integrated way that isn't just like a bunch of things with one login or a single user journey, but also a clinical integration layer. The way we work with you on eating, it takes into account if you have high blood pressure, it takes into account if maybe you have diabetes. So it's all sort of folded into this clinical integration layer too, and that's valuable. Yeah.
No, I definitely appreciate that perspective, and really how it's whole health. I mean, that's certainly awesome, right? And that's a great philosophy in terms of designing program. So I just want to circle back to the monologue when we kind of kick things off, right? So we know Ozembic is all over the news, all over social
Oh
media,
yeah,
right?
sure.
So
Sure.
just a few things here, right? Do we know for certain if there's any long-term side effects of it? I mean, clearly, the results speak for themselves. I mean, hashtag Ozembic face is all over TikTok, YouTube,
Sure.
Instagram, what have you. So from what I understand, and clearly you're a medical doctor, I'm not, but it does result in significant weight loss. But we
Sure.
kind of don't know, I guess, long term, 10, 20 years down the road, if you have to take this for the rest of your life, what the impact is. Is there any truth to that? Or what's your take, really?
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, this is a huge topic. I'm so glad that you are deciding to take this on in the podcast too. I think that's just shows that you're focused on, big and important things. I think that's awesome. Look, and we know people are being offered Ozempic, like, in the nail salon, I mean, there's a market for this, a black market as well for it. So when something
Incredible.
works that well, that's going to happen. All right. They're exceedingly expensive. Okay, definitely. And remember, I don't know if you remember this, but like we had faced a parallel kind of thing when the hepatitis C drugs came out. Extraordinary efficacy. People were being cured of conditions they told they were going to die from. And this was like, in $60,000, $70,000. And then what happened over time is there's additional market entrants, more evidence, more longer term evidence, the crowded field, the PBMs then, there was downward pressure on the pricing with the rebate structure. And so then you ended up with, quite affordable, I would say, Hep C meds now today. So similar, we're going to see over the next 3 to 5 years for weight loss. This is my prediction for your audience, that you're going to see almost a parallel structure, maybe even more accelerated that you saw with the Hep C drugs. Now, having said that, that doesn't help you right now because you've got extremely expensive medications. So your question was about side effects. Look, these drugs are life-changing for some people. I mean, they're really remarkable. And there are even some early signals, too. One large study that showed that if you go off these drugs, you gain the weight back again. And that was pretty profound, especially if you don't have, I think if you don't have the other behavioral things in place, that's really tough. So, I think of what we're doing as a strategy also to help maintain those kinds of gains as well that people get. But some of these folks are going to be on it indefinitely. Regarding long-term use, we don't know yet, but actually the early signals suggest that they may be helpful long-term. So that creates additional pricing problems because stay on it for a long time. So we need that kind of support. So then it comes down to, so if it turns out to be true that, hey, these things are effective and you need to stay on them and long-term benefit is good for those who are on it, then it comes down to member selection. A, who should be the right people on this? And then B, should people be people who don't fall into that category, or maybe others, should they be trying other things and getting support that they need instead of, or alongside, or to help wean? All those factors then wrap around. But it's going to be a serious cost problem for a lot of these folks out there. And I predict that that's going to be, 3 to 5 years before we see that downward pressure.
Sure. And right now, with many employers, they're debating, hey, do I cover these medications? And
Yeah.
as we have conversations, we find out if you don't cover them, you're probably indirectly covering them because people will try to get Wegovy, right? And they'll try to get their
Yeah.
doctor to figure out
Well,
a
yeah, that's right.
workaround, which
Yeah. 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 They try to get Wegovy and instead they'll just get Ozempic. Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, maybe if you don't cover it, perhaps you are going to be covering it either way. So maybe it
That's
makes
right.
sense to get ahead of the curve. But I think, to your point, regardless of if you cover it or not, it's important just to do other things and give people other avenues to kind of make sure they're doing everything they possibly can to get in the shape that they really need to be in for long-term longevity.
They're extraordinarily efficacious drugs for sure. They have significant side effects for many people, but what we've learned about, especially the U.S. population, is that people will put up with a lot of misery in order to lose weight, and so diarrhea, fecal incontinence, bloating, nausea, vomiting. People will put up with it. So it's like the tolerance based on the results. So I think you're exactly right. We've got to be thinking about who are the right folks for this, making sure that we manage it appropriately, offering other wraparound services, and I think folks are going to be biting a painful bullet here. Now, one way you could address this is by getting your population, offering populations alternatives, getting involved as quickly as possible to manage the weight in other ways. That can help prevent the tidal wave.
Now, Dr. Omar, certainly we spent a lot of time talking about weight management, but I want to hear a little bit more about Dario. So
Yeah.
anything new and exciting going on with Dario that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, so we're growing like crazy, which is really wonderful. As you know, Dario is publicly traded. Last year, we announced we'd have 100 enterprise deals. We hit that last year, where we have some great strategic partnerships, an amazing partnership with Sanofi. We recently announced a strategic partnership with Amwell that can bring providers into the loop. We've got national payer contracts as well, and lots of excellent evidence. So we just released our first study. Sanofi released their first study that was analyzing Dario that found, a 23.5% reduction in hospitalizations for Dario members. And this was arm's length. So they took Dario's data and studied it through a third party. So really like powerfully validated. And so for employers that are looking for those kinds of savings, and I know we're in a more savings cost-oriented environment these days, Dario is leading the pack on solid difference in difference propensity match, like the most rigorous kind of economic financial studies that you can do, showing. And look, in healthcare, it's pretty rare to have solutions that pay for themselves, if you truth be told. So I think we're at a really good spot with this new data. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, that's definitely some really incredible stats that you just shared there, Dr. Omar. So, Dr. Omar, let's say there's someone out there, maybe an organization or an individual, and they want to perhaps learn a little bit more about Dario. Perhaps they want to get in contact with you directly. Where can they go?
Super easy. Dariohealth.com. And we can all be contacted there. I'm easy to find. I'm on Twitter at Dr. Manejwala, which is my last name. And we're all very accessible and approachable. And we would love to connect with your audience. And hey, let's talk about how we can get this in place for employers or other enterprise. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Dr. Omar, really appreciate the conversation. And thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, really appreciate the podcast. And thanks for having me.
As always, we encourage everyone to like the video, subscribe, and until next time, thank you for joining. And thank you once again, Dr. Omar.